Alright, in this video here we're going to code the blue obstacles that move back and forth that show up in this part of our level right here. Our old X and our old Y, obviously we need them for our limits, but they do not need to be shown on here for the player's perspective. So we can just leave them over there and just do what they need to do behind the scenes. Alright, when we look at the blue obstacles, they all four of them start in the middle, and they just oscillate back and forth between this whole play arena right in here. Alright, so we're going to build the first one first, and there's a lot of characteristics about each of these that are very similar, so we'll just duplicate them as we go down the line. For the sake of organizing, we'll call the top one obstacle number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Alright, so we will go ahead and add. Alright, I'm going to put this thing right over top of our center point. Alright, it's a little big right now, so we'll dial it back to maybe 60. That looks good. Alright, so it's going to start right here in the middle, and then it's going to go left to this extreme point over here, and then right, and it's just going to go back and forth. Alright, so in our code, whenever we receive start level 1, we want this thing to show up. In the end, we'll have it hide. Alright, but as it's here, it's going to be moving back and forth. Alright, so start level 1, we're going to want to go to this position that it's at right now. And then we're going to have this thing move over to this side right over here. Alright, so X27, Y62. Now if you notice, the Y position never changes for any of these things. Right? If we go to here, our Y position always stays the same. Alright, the Y position is different for each of these objects, but it stays the same within that object. Alright, so if this is at 62, that's where it's going to sit. So we'll go over here and we'll see how far over this thing's going to have to be. Alright, so right here, negative 73 is our X position on this side, and what did we have before? 62, which actually we're still at right here, which is good, right? If we were off a little bit right here, if I actually went down to 57, I'd be like, all right, change that to 62. All right, so negative 73 will say, right over here, that's the extreme on this left-hand side of the screen. So we're going to want this thing to glide over here to this point. And then now it's going to fall into a forever loop where it just goes back and forth between here and here and here and here. So we'll say forever, glide to the other side of the screen, and then we'll have it go back and forth. So we want this thing now to glide all the way over here. Alright, so 110 is our X position. We'll change that 64 to 62. Alright, so glide to 110 and 62. So when this thing starts, it goes to there and back. Alright, now this thing is going to have to go back to this other position over here, which we can actually just duplicate. We don't need that forever loop. We want to duplicate just this one right here, and it's going to go back to the other side. Alright, and there we go. Alright, the last thing we want to fix for this, as you can see, it takes 1 second in the beginning for this to go from halfway over to here, and then it's taken a full second to go back and forth. Now you can make the timings anything that you want them to be, but it would be more appropriate if to go halfway would be half a second. Alright, and now our speed should be pretty consistent for the duration of the life of this object. Alright, so this is doing exactly what we want it to do. Now, instead of creating all these other ones and hunting for all the codes and commands, we can actually just duplicate this for the other 3 objects that are on here. Now I find it's easiest, we'll start it up again. I find it's easiest if we do object number 1 and number 3 first, because they are doing the same thing other than being in a different Y position. So we can go ahead and do that now. So we're going to stop this. We are going to rename this one obstacle 1, and then we'll duplicate it and we'll call this one obstacle number 3. Right, because it's going to be right down here. Alright, so it's doing the same thing, just at a different y position. This is where we want it to be. We'll just move it into position there, and you can see that our y position is -10. So it's really as simple as changing all of these things to -10s. Right, the size is the same, the shape is the same, and then the show and the hide when we receive start and end level 1 are all the same as well. Right, perfect. So that's what we want for there. All right, now for our next two, we'll make object number 2 next, and we can see that when it starts, it goes right first, so it's doing the opposite cycle as the other two. So we'll stop this. We will duplicate. All right, we have obstacle number 2. I have to move this one on here, so it goes 1, 2, 3. That's just me. So if we move this one up, it's going to want to be right in the middle of these two, and our new y position for this looks like 26. Change all of our 62s to 26. Alright, so it's in the right y position, but now we want it to do the opposite in terms of which direction it moves. Alright, so we're going to break this thing apart a little bit here. Rather than go to this, -73 and 26 over here as the first thing, we're going to make that the second thing. So we'll say we want to go to our other position over here first. Then next, within our forever loop, we're going to go to this position. And then finally, we'll go to here. Now our timings are a little messed up, but let's see if our directions are correct. All right. I think we're off a little bit with this one right here. This should be our original position up here of 110. Alright, so in the beginning, it's going the direction we want it to go. Let's change our timings around and make it look a little bit more appropriate. So our first one is going to be 0.5. Our second one is going to be 1. And our last one we can leave at 1. Alright, perfect. You can probably see where we're going with this now. Our last one, which is going to look similar, or I should say our obstacle number 4, which is going to look similar to number 2. So we can go ahead and duplicate number 2, and our y position, looking like right here, is going to now be at -46. Alright, that looks good. Alright, now we're able to go through and dodge all these things. We're not coded to go back to the beginning just yet. We will cover that in our next tutorial.